Hey, I'm Andrew. I'm a technical lead here at Liatru, and today I'm going to demo how we observe delivery. We're going to talk about a few different things. First, we're going to have some slides giving the context of why observing delivery is important. We're going to talk about some of our first principles at Liatru, and we're going to talk about the engineering defaults and transformation. From there, we're going to hop right into the demo. We're going to discuss some things about OpenTelemetry. We're going to talk about the leading indicators and the lagging indicators, also known as DORA metrics. And we're going to talk about some extras within this demo as well. Things like OIDC authentication and automated dependency management. Let's jump right into it. So first, let's talk about why delivery metrics matter. Well, delivery metrics give you the ability to quantify performance. That means teams can track their progress, they can set their benchmarks, and they can identify areas for improvement. It allows them to continuously improve. They can identify bottlenecks, inefficiencies, and they can refine their own processes, optimize workflows, and enhance collaboration to accelerate delivery. Of course, observing delivery also gives you the benefit of risk mitigation. This is particularly true of metrics such as change failure rate and your mean time to recovery, which are included within the DORA metrics. This helps teams minimize business risks associated with service disruptions and costly downtimes. It allows teams to also make informed decisions. Teams can make strategic choices to improve alignment with business goals based on their own observing of data. It also helps to improve collaboration across cross-functional teams. Silos get broken down, and it fosters a holistic approach to software delivery. Everyone owns their things, and they get to observe and measure that as long as they feel safe. Now, this goes right in line with some of Liatru's first principles. The engineering defaults also align with Liatru's first principles. Our first principles are as follows. I'm not going to read them all, but we value small batch delivery and fast feedback. We have a culture of experimentation and empowerment. We are transparent communicators, in fact, overly so. We focus on flow, and we emphasize action. Emphasis on action is particularly important, because observability without action is really just monitoring. Before we go into the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little story. If you've read the Phoenix Project, you'll probably remember the individual named Brent. Brent was a rock star. He was fantastic at his job, but he was a bottleneck. Don't become a Brent. Well, in my career, I've certainly become a Brent multiple times. I've caused bottlenecks with the teams that I work in. Observing and making data-driven decisions has allowed me personally to figure out where can I improve? How can I make sure the team that I support or the team I'm part of is set up for success? And how can I make sure that I'm not causing any bottlenecks? So I've personally found valuing these first principles and the engineering defaults that we're going to talk about in my own career and life. Now, for a moment, let's talk about transformation. Ideally, a transformation may look something along the lines of this, which is extremely high level. But hopefully, you'd be able to answer the question, where are you now when you kick off a transformation? That requires that you have the data right at that transformation kickoff. Then, as the journey begins, your teams start to observe themselves, and they start to be able to see how it is that they're doing and see what matters to them. Then as the transformation continues, more and more positive change occurs over time. In fact, teams should be able to see things like their deployment frequency increasing and their mean time to restore reducing. Then they reflect. Now, this is of course cyclical, so it doesn't end here, and they should be reflecting regularly throughout the process. But the specific dedicated times for reflections allows teams to look at themselves, evaluate, and say, we're doing really awesome here, but we could use some improvement here. This timeline aligns with the engineering defaults. Now, just a little disclaimer here. We have these in kind of an ordered list, right? Mirroring that same timeline that we saw earlier. But realistically, as a team observes their own data, they'd be able to make the decision and reprioritize various different defaults based on how they're doing. So really, this list can be completely shuffled around. Some teams may already be doing certain things. Some teams may be better in one area than others. And so they may focus on the most impactful area to solve the business problems at hand. But generally speaking, we can talk about starting out with small tasks, pair programming, and team ownership of quality. Then, as time goes on, they would iteratively improve, and they would start to focus on things like trunk-based development or insert constant here driven development. That would be things like test-driven development, behavior, domain-driven development, etc. And then, of course, focusing on fast automated builds. Continuing, they would focus on continuous delivery and automated deployments, no longer just the CI. And then, of course, they'd want to build in security, build for production, build for observability, and build in resiliency. These are the engineering defaults. And over time, teams would look towards setting these goals. Now, what are the metrics that allow us to actually measure those engineering defaults? DORA is a big one. It's a hot name in the industry. It's very effective. Those DORA metrics are lead time for changes, deployment frequency, change failure rate, and mean time to restore. Now, these are all lagging indicators. And what do I mean by lagging? I don't mean it as a bad thing, but lagging just means that these things have already occurred. So this is a picture that's already happened, and you're seeing this information after the fact. Your deployments have already happened. Leading indicators, on the other end, help predict where you're going. So leading indicators include metrics like work cycle time, branch and pull request specific metrics, contributor counts based on the types of code that you're leveraging, your code coverage, and your code quality. These types of metrics would help you figure out if you're going towards the right direction. Now, of course, platform engineering is also a very hot topic. So DevX, the developer experience, and platform metrics are also critical. This includes things like adoption rate, contributions, resiliency, mean time to first commit and onboarding, and so forth. Then you have those interpersonal human style metrics, which are things like your joy index, your space metrics, and of course, business OKRs. Do your teams have well-defined objectives that they can measure towards? All these things help us to figure out if we as team and as engineers are aligning with the engineering defaults. So let's hop right into the demo. We're going to just focus for a moment on OpenTelemetry. OpenTelemetry is a framework and a set of tools that allow people to do observability. It's the second most actively contributed project in the CNCF, right behind Kubernetes. OpenTelemetry allows you to be vendor agnostic. So if you want to use one SaaS for observability one day and another next, you can do that. And you don't have to fundamentally switch your underlying infrastructure, your underlying tools to be able to send that data to your new SaaS. OpenTelemetry is something we heavily support here at Liatrio. We could be viewed as an OpenTelemetry first company with regards to observability. And their OpenTelemetry demo is what we have forked to be able to display the leading indicators and the DORA metrics. I highly encourage anyone and everyone to check out the OpenTelemetry demo. It's time after time helped people to understand what is observability and how to use it. It's a great starting point for any type of observability conversation. One of the things that the OpenTelemetry demo spins up is, of course, Grafana. So from Grafana, we can actually view dashboards that have been pre-populated with regards to this demo. So first, let's take a look at the delivery metrics dashboard. These are the leading indicators. So this includes metrics like branch count, branch age per repo in days, contributor counts, your open pull request age, your merge pull request age, and your proof pull request age. What do these metrics tell you? Well, maybe if you have a lot of branches in a given repository, it might be a cognitive overhead. Also could mean that you're just not cleaning things up. But if you have an average branch age, it could also mean that there's a lot of technical debt. If you correlate the average branch age with branch count and open pull request age, you may see that there are bottlenecks within your team for getting things approved. This could mean that you're just not paired programming, because pair programming accelerates delivery and it accelerates pull request review time because you have a pair of eyes already on the code. These types of metrics in this dashboard help teams self-evaluate and look and see, this is where I'm doing well, This is where I can improve. Oh man, we have a lot of branches. Maybe we just need to clean them up. These are your leading indicators. Let's go over to our lagging indicators. Now, this would be the DORA demo dashboard. As you can see, you're going to not have some information here. And that's okay for this particular demo. It's because it requires real events and real deployments to occur. Now, I have 2 repos that have been set up for this, and I've been just messing with them for a few moments before this demo, which means there's not a ton of data to look at. I also haven't had a failure, so there is no change failure rate at this point in time. Well, let's go ahead and look at how we can make this happen. So we have a demo that is this DORA deploy demo repository. This repository is essentially a TerraGrunt repository that uses TerraGrunt and GitHub Actions to do a deployment of a Terraform Lambda module to an AWS account. This uses, under the hood, OIDC authentication to securely access that AWS account without storing any credentials within the repository. Right now, let's go ahead and downgrade the current version in dev for this repository. We're going to just make a little commit, and we're going to set this to version 3. We're going to open a new branch, create a pull request, and let the workflows run. Now, of course, as part of this little section here, the workflows that are going to run are simply going to do a plan and allow you to read the Terraform outputs. But let me explain just a couple things while this runs. So I set a version. Why did I set a version? This is because we have a Terraform module that actually has the Lambda source code and the Terraform source code accompanying that Lambda for the AWS account. It's versioned. We semantically version that repository, and we do so through conventional commits and semantic release utilities. What I have done here by setting it to version 0.3.0 is actually set to a completely different language for the Lambda. That particular version of the Lambda is written in Python. So we've got our checks run. We're going to go ahead and merge. Now, once we've merged, we're going to see a deployment start to run. Now, I have no clue if this is going to work or not. We have a random feature in here that 10% of the time is going to fail your workflow run. If the workflow automatically fails, then an incident issue would automatically be opened in the GitHub project on this repository. It looks like it's going to work though. Looks like it didn't fail this time. So you can see here that it's changed runtimes, for example. We've gone from Go to Python. All right, and we've got a new URL that we can invoke, which is right here. So if we refresh this, we see, oh, hey, hello world, great. It's an application that's been deployed and running. We can also look back at our DORA dashboard, and we can see that we've had more average lead times to changes. That is pretty low. That's pretty low. And we've had more deployments. Deployments over time. We're now at 3 because I deployed twice before this demo. Now that's great. That's a successful deployment. But what if I realized that I didn't want to install Python? In fact, maybe this is an outage because we downgraded to the wrong version. Well, let me go ahead and open up an incident in the repository. So we'll go ahead and create an issue. Let's say fake demo deployment incident. Don't use Python. All right, we're going to attach an incident label and submit this issue. Now the question is, how do we fix this issue, right? Let's say there's some alerting mechanism in place that says there's an outage and a team goes in here and like, oh, wow, this is a production outage. Let's go resolve this. In this case, I know that the version I really want deployed is the Go version, which would be 0.6.1. Now, fortunately, we leverage a tool called RenovateBot, which is an automated dependency manager. And so it just so happened to have seen that I had downgraded to a version and it said, oh, well, there's a new update here. Let's go ahead and bump that version update. So we'll go ahead and look at this PR and say that this is the PR that's going to fix the incident, because in this scenario, it is. And that way I don't have to actually go create my own commit to update that version. We're going to squash and we're going to merge it. Now, this could also continue to fail because we do have the random number deployment failure for this workflow. So we'll go ahead and watch it and see what happens. Wow, Looks like it succeeded again. That's great. It's running its plan now. And in a moment, what we should see is a new deployment that has occurred that is using the Go version of the Lambda. As you can see here, runtime is being changed based on that new version. And we've got our URL, which happens to be the same. We can see that the value that's returned is different. It's now a timestamp because that was what we put in the Go code in this case. So, yay, successful deployment. The issue, the incident, has been resolved for this particular repository automatically in this case because of various different workflows that we have in place. Now, if we look here, we've actually got a change failure rate because we made a change. We identified that there was a production outage and we did fix it. So now we also have your average time to restore and various different pieces of information. Now, under the hood, all this is using from the OpenTelemetry demo perspective and the GitHub perspective is a few key processes on GitHub. That includes issues marked with incident. It also includes a couple of different workflows that are very basic. And it simply uses a GitHub application to event logs from GitHub to a webhook receiver to an OpenTelemetry collector. Now, the documentation does explain how to set this up if you wanted to set this up, but it does require, again, real repositories. So that's how you can get DORA metrics from GitHub and how you can observe both the leading indicators and the lagging indicators to make informed, data-driven decisions as a team. Now, we've already talked about RenovateBot and we've talked about YDC authentication. One additional thing about this is that it is using our own distribution of the OpenTelemetry collector that we're currently porting functionality into the upstream OpenTelemetry collector contrib repository. We also have a section called OpenOlly.dev, which is an area for documentation, resources, reference architectures to help enable observability across the industry a little bit more. These are things that we've learned and things that we leverage. This includes a lot of just external resources, like resources linking to OpenTelemetry. One of the key things here that we have, though, is safely observing human systems. It's a little specification that we've written based on guiding principles to how to make sure that people feel safe when being observed. And realistically, it's your teams that should be observing their own selves anyway. We also talk about the delivery metrics that we just spoke about, the various different leading or lagging indicators, like the DORA metrics and the references to those, as well as leading indicators, like the ones that I showed you on the dashboard with charts on how something may be risky or what the engineering default may be, and ways to calculate these metrics. Feel free to check it out. It also links to this OpenTelemetry demo fork that we have as well, which is here. On that note, thanks for joining me. Again, I'm Adriel. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out through any of our communication means, and we'll catch you on the next one.